All right, before we introduce our speaker, I want to make an announcement real quick. So to the ministers, board of directors, and congregants of the Center of Enlightenment, today I wish to honor the senior ministers who have graced our spiritual community in the past. Reverend Ken Novashevsky, Reverend Kathleen Katona, Reverend Karen Woodmansey, and others, whose names, through momentarily elusive, remain etched in our collective memory. To be a senior minister here at the Center of Enlightenment is to ascend to the highest honor, a role accompanied by the sacred mantle of apostolic succession. The apostolic succession is handed down from the current apostolic minister. The minister is the only one who can ordain other ministers here at Center of Enlightenment. The apostolic minister is the one who makes the decision and passes the succession to another minister of the choice when they retire or no longer wish to serve in the capacity. Apostolic succession is not bestowed based on seniority or tenure. Instead, it rests on the discernment of the apostolic minister. In March 2020, Reverend Ken Novashevsky graciously passed the apostolic succession to me, marking my elevation to senior minister. The title has been a source of immense pride, but today I humbly announce my decision to step down. It is a decision that I have spent a great deal of time praying about and thinking over. It was not easy, but it's the right decision with the interest of the church in mind. As many of you know, my job has been extremely challenging and requires me to work different times of the day, including several nights and weekends, and I'm pretty much on call all the time. This year the workload has been extremely grueling, and our team is a key component of a larger scale project that I have been appointed as tech lead on, so my time will become even more scarce in the next couple years. It is only for this reason the timing is right for me to step down and announce that as of today, I am formally passing the apostolic succession torch to Rev Carol Willis as our new senior minister here at the Center of Enlightenment. I intend to give Rev Carol my full support and will continue to serve here as a minister on staff. It is my sincere desire that you also give Rev Carol as much assistance and support as you have given me over the past 4.5 years. I want to thank each and every one of you for your loyalty and your willingness to keep the Center of Enlightenment going into the future. May Spirit bless each and every one of you as we journey forward. May our community continue to thrive and prosper. And with that, I'd like to announce
I want to say that Reverend Ken spent a lot of time thinking about who he wanted to turn Center of Enlightenment over to. We bugged him for a long time, and he felt that Reverend Keith was the right person, and that was so. And I just want to tell you that we weathered some really tough times, but it was your leadership and holding the sacred space that we made it through the pandemic and the economy and all the other crazy things that have happened over the last 4.5 years.
Yeah, he always used to joke with me. He goes, obviously we had no idea the pandemic was coming. So he always man, I just could not have timed that any worse. Because literally he passed the apostolic succession to me, and then it was 2 weeks later the church went into shutdown because the country was in pandemic mode. Just interesting fact that I think it's something like 75% of the smaller churches closed during the pandemic. So we're doing okay.
Yeah, we tried.
And a lot of it is because we brought in Zoom, right? So we went to Zoom. It was an easy decision to continue our services and stuff. And thank you for Richard Harrison for bringing our technology in and doing that. So. All right, without further ado, let's introduce our speaker. Reverend Carol Willis was ordained here in 2015. She has over 50 years of metaphysical experience and study and prayer and meditation. She's our treasurer and now our senior minister. She loves teaching classes here. Her classes are focused on Bible study, metaphysics, prosperity, and spiritual healing of the soul. Since the late 1970s, Rev Carol has been a teacher, public speaker, spiritual counselor, youth and family consultant. She's also a Reiki-trained practitioner and a spiritual healer at Center of Enlightenment. So please welcome Rev Carol Willis.
Thank you, Reverend Keith. And I just want to say before I start, I don't really think there is enough words to say thank you to you. That just doesn't seem like enough unless we say something like we thank you with our whole heart and you're a part of our history here and we are so appreciative of you. So thank you for your leadership. And I'm glad you decided to stay part of us.
Absolutely.
Because I asked him that. Are you going to stay with us? You're not going to leave, are you? I chose this talk today because of what is happening now with our church. We've all had times when our happiness and contentment has been interrupted by life happening. We don't always respond to events and circumstances in a positive or calm way. That's part of being human. But we need to remember Spirit has more in mind for us. And how do we get to that place? When Jesus began his ministry, his first miracle was at the wedding feast in Cana of Galilee. Sometimes a celebration like this lasts 1 or 2 days, or as long as 7 days. If you were really wealthy, there's room up here in the front if you want to. So if you were really wealthy, you might have gotten a 7-day celebration. There was so much celebrating going on that they ran out of wine, leaving the host to be embarrassed by the lack of hospitality towards his guests. And so I'd like to read to you the Bible account. I'm sure you remember it, but I'd like to refresh your memory. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." And I always thought, how disrespectful he was to her. However, the point behind this is Jesus was waiting to be, this was at the beginning of his ministry. He was waiting to be led by Spirit. And so that's why he said to her, "My hour has not yet come." I haven't heard any direction from Spirit. His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." And so she must have sensed that and backed off and gave this direction to the servants. Now there were 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast." And they took it. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom. And he said to him, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then that which is inferior, but you have kept the good wine until now. This beginning of signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum, he, his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they did not stay there many days. Excuse me for 1 minute. Charles Fillmore states, a marriage is symbolic of the union of consciousness with the indwelling Christ. Before such a union can take place, the negative state of mind, which is water, must be transmuted into positive spiritual life, which is wine. The essence of everything and everyone is divine or spiritual energy. We all know that basic principle. That energy is shaped and formed by thought and feeling, words and actions. Consequently, it can be reformed or transmuted into some other expression or manifestation. For that to happen, we have to acknowledge and accept a higher idea of a new possibility. Jesus was aware of the lack of the supply of wine, but he knew there was plenty of water. The spiritual energy of the physical elements was the same. They just needed to change form and also change vibration. In times of difficulty, lack, or fear, it's at that time we should be aligning our consciousness with spirit so that we can become a co-creator with God. And this is one of the reasons why the ministers chose this affirmation for this year. I am a conscious co-creator of infinite abundance in every aspect of my life. When we are aligned with spirit, we are no longer giving power and life to concepts of difficulty, lack, or fear. None of those thoughts are part of God's mind, and so it's important that we let them go. We're ready to welcome new possibilities and experience. Many of Jesus's miracles were about transmuting spiritual energy. For example, feeding the 5,000. 5 loaves and 2 fish became enough to feed 5,000 people, and they had 12 baskets left over. Raising his friend Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus was dead 3 days until Jesus came along and called him forth. Healing a withered hand. Healing a lame person. Healing a blind person. Restoring sight, calming the storm, and finally his own physical resurrection. And there's many more of his healing miracles. Elizabeth Sand Turner wrote, the miracle of changing the negative elements in consciousness into spiritual forces is performed in us when by praying we unify our minds with Christ. The Christ is in control, and our unregenerated thoughts and feelings are raised to spiritual heights. Thus, the holy marriage of the soul with Christ is consummated in harmony and joy. As a result, our outer needs are always filled in time to meet the demands. The water was made wine at the right moment. Also, the blessing that comes from Christ is superior to that which the mortal can produce. The ruler of the feast declared the new wine to be the best offered to the guests, and it is abundant, more than enough that was supplied, end quote. I would like to take this story a step further metaphysically than it is normally discussed. This wedding took place in Cana of Galilee, and metaphysically, Cana means balance and symbolizes in the body the larynx in the throat. It also means place of the reeds. The larynx originates and measures the volume and character of the sounds of the voice. Galilee metaphysically means a circuit or rolling energy. Galilee furnishes the vibratory force that acts through the place of the reeds or the vocal cords. So Cana of Galilee then is the power center in consciousness, and in the body expresses through the power center in the throat. So whether you're a student of Charles Fillmore's 12 Powers or you're a student of chakras, you know that this area here is one of our power centers. It is the power center, and every time we speak words of creativity, we give power to it because we put it out here. We start putting it out here in the physical, and we start to shape that invisible idea. And then after the words, we have actions. So we have thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. And wonderful things happen when they all match. When they don't match, then we get some crazy kind of hodgepodge something. But when they match, we now are giving shape and form to this idea, whatever it is. The 6 water pots are the nerve centers in the body, which are filled with the water of life or nerve fluid, the chakra energy centers. This symbol of the water pots represents the abundance of vital energy that can be generated by aligning an I am spiritual thought with the nerve fluid in the various centers of the organism, creating increased action and function. So he calls them the nerve centers, but we can think about them as the chakra energy centers. And the 6 are symbolized by the water pots. And so the moral of the story perhaps is, we are only limited by the physical world if we believe we are. When we allow spirit and spiritual energy to transmute, life takes on a new experience and meaning. And as for this church, with our announcement today, we have a brand new future. Not to say that anything that went before was bad or not good or lacking. I'm just going to say that was then, and this is now. And I really believe that as much good as we have experienced to this point, we're now open to experience even more. Just look around. Our sanctuary is practically full today. And I can remember doing services where there was half a dozen people sitting here. And when I first came to the church, there were about that many people sitting in the audience. And yet the doors were open, they had the service, and they just continued on. Now today the sanctuary is practically full. And that makes my heart really sing. In closing, just a word of gratitude for everyone, ministers and congregants alike, who have brought this church to this moment, and for those who will usher it into the future. Thank you.